Hey, Crispy Brown here, Med Preservation Inc. How you doing? Tonight, I want to wish everybody a happy pharmacy week. Now, it'll probably be next week before my guy gets this edited and posted on social media. So, happy belated pharmacy week. But to anybody I've ever worked with out there, pharmacists, pharmacy techs, analysts, specialists, anything related to the pharmacy business at all, happy pharmacy week, and I hope you had a good week. Tonight, I want to talk about formulary service loads. And what prompted this video was really I got a call from a coworker last week looking for some help. She used to be a consultant, now she's in an analyst role in a hospital, which is a little bit different than a consultant, but a lot of times you do the same thing. One of the differences, though, is you usually have to maintain the formulary service vendor loads. And what this does is basically load allergy and drug information. Now, her particular site, which she just started there, but she was having some problems with NDC errors, and come to find out, they really hadn't updated their formulary NDCs lately, and so needed a little help or a little advice on how to go about that. And the way I really recommended that she do that is the non-matching report through the formulary service loads. So I wanted to go over the formulary service load tonight and really how I manage that. And so let's get into that a little bit. So first of all, the first part of it is to load the allergies, and you have to load. Basically, you have to download the file first. That comes from a file transfer protocol site, First Data Bank. There's also another vendor that Meditech uses, but I'm not as keen on them, so I just really won't mention them. But I like the First Data Bank product. I think it's clinically sound, and they really have a bunch of different options between alert space or the API that's an expanse. Or just the regular, load that you do in Magic or client server. So first thing is the allergy load, and you load this up, and then you want to run your error report and kind of look at that before you file the allergy load. And so if there's any errors on that allergy list, then you just want to review those. I've had, once or twice in all the allergy loads that I've done, I've had an issue and had to open up a task on it. But for the most part, these are pretty clean reports, and you don't have to do much with them. So then after you review that report, then you just want to file that data and make that data permanent in the system. Kind of hangs up in a suspense file until you file it. And so then always check the error report again, but like I said, that's usually pretty clean. The next piece is you would want to go to load the pharmacy data or the drug data, and this would help load all the drug information data on the drugs themselves that you're using to dispense in the pharmacy. So you load that information just like the allergy report, and then or allergy load, and then you want to run a bunch of reports. And so the first one I run usually is the error report, and generally there's not too much on here, but from time to time you'll find something, and usually that comes down to rebuilding a drug to get it off that error report. So that's more often than not the case I see. The non-matching report, which I mentioned earlier, is really the big one, and you should be maintaining this every month. Or First Data Bank, you really only have to load it every quarter. It's probably better if you can get it in every month, but we know things that happen. You at least have to do it quarterly. But whenever you do these loads, you really want to go through this non-matching report and get it as clean as you can. So most of the time, that's just replacing NDCs. You have obsolete NDCs. So you want to go through that list and try to clean it up the best you can. Sometimes you got to rebuild some drugs if it's a different package size and you just can't make it work. But really, you want this list down to about 20, and a lot of those are maybe fake drugs or just stuff that doesn't really have an NDC for allergy checking, just some weird stuff that you may carry in the pharmacy that you have to carry, but the drug load just doesn't recognize it for whatever reason. And so this was really my friend's problem, was the non-matching list, and came down to about 300 drugs really that they had on there that they needed to clean up NDCs on. And so somebody hadn't really been doing their due diligence when they're loading this FSV data. So I instructed her that that's what I would do. And it's a lot of legwork, right? You got to go around the pharmacy and collect all those NDCs because you really want what you have on the shelf there. And you replace this in the primary NDC on page 1 of the drug dictionary. And so she was able to get that done and kind of correct the problem, but it's some work. So you really want to stay on top of it on a monthly basis. So that's what I would recommend. And I'll just go ahead and mention this here so I don't forget it later. Is once you update those NDCs, you must delete that original drug load and reload it before you file it, because otherwise that load that you're uploading into the system doesn't check against the new NDC and ultimately won't file the new NDC data into your system, and you will basically lose that information. So you always, if you make any changes in between the load and the file for the drug load, you really want to delete that run and start over, and that'll give you nice clean reports the next time through. And so then the other report I really look at is the recycled NDC report. And so this report was created because Meditech had some problems that they've since fixed, but drug manufacturers weren't required to really report what NDCs they had quit using, and they kind of go back into the pool, and then another manufacturer may pick them up, and so this would cause the internal reference of the drug to be wrong. And by running this recycled NDC report, you can kind of check what you have in that drug shell versus the internal drug mapping, basically. And so very important that you run this report diligently. And again, this would be the 3 different reports I run. You can do the price list, I guess, too, if you want to, but a lot of people update prices manually, or they might have the interface, the Cardinal interface, which is pretty slick. I like that. So that would maybe be the 4th report that I would run. But for the most part, I just run the 3 depending on the situation. So once you've gone through all those reports, again, if you make any changes at all, you do want to delete that initial run and rerun it. And then check your reports again, but they should be pretty clean, and then you can file it after that. So once you get the pharmacy drug load done, then you need to do the RxM drug load. And basically, this is a little bit easier. It just involves going into the customer-defined parameters. And I want to back up a step because I did forget one thing. After you do the drug load in pharmacy or drug file in pharmacy, you want to check your EMR IDs too, because these new drugs don't always come in with EMR IDs, and really that is what allows someone to check the historical data in the chart once it crosses over to OE or OM, whatever ordering module you may be using. And so when case management or quality or somebody's going in there and trying to review the records, if these EMR IDs aren't there, it looks like the patient never got the medication. So very important that you keep up with the EMR IDs as well after the pharmacy drug file. And flu shots are notorious for this. So another reason why you want to try to keep up with these things monthly is a lot of times those flu shots don't get in there until like a month or 2 before you want to start giving them. And you really want that data to be up to date when you need to start giving flu shots, and you also want to make sure that EMR ID is on there so it really looks like that person got that flu shot. So back to the RxM file. Again, I started the customer-defined parameters is where you're going to do this, and you're basically just pulling that drug run from pharmacy over into RxM. It's real simple. You just go in there and F9, look up the run, the most recent run, and then you pull that into RxM, and it automatically file itself pretty much once you hit save, and ask you a few questions like, do you want to load all the drugs? And yes. So but one thing I try to do before I do that RxM run is I've created a common string report, or just a common drug report, really, because Meditech, the way it creates its own mnemonics, it's not like pharmacy where you have to manage those mnemonics, but Meditech will create its own mnemonics in RxM, and because of that, if it thinks a drug is obsolete or old, it will automatically discontinue that drug, and you really don't have a good way of knowing it unless you run this common report. So I like to do a before and after common report, so I can see what my common drugs were before, and then what they were after. And then I will go, when I compare those two, anything that's missing on the after report, I will go find it, pull the strings off of it, and place them on the new mnemonic, put that mnemonic on my common list, and that way you don't get disappearing strings. And so that is a huge issue with RxM, and you really have to be diligent there as well, and keep those drugs up to date and keep those strings up to date. So make sure you're doing the legwork there, because that's a big piece of it. You'll have a provider call pretty quick. It seems like there's always one real popular drug in there that gets inactivated, and so you want to fix that as soon as possible. The other report I usually run out of there is the update report, And this report does list what gets inactivated, and I find it most helpful for if you got something in procedures or sets. You might need to go dig that mnemonic out and replace it as well. So those are the two reports I run out of RxM. And so that pretty much goes for Magic and client server. Those two systems are pretty similar in regards to the formulary service runs. They might vary a little bit if you're not on version 2 allergies, but boy, I hope everybody's on version 2. By this point, I haven't come across a site in a long time that's not on version 2, but they might be out there. So I want to talk about Expanse a little bit too, because while the allergy load and the drug load are similar, it really uses an API or interface to kind of real time this information, and so that you can see the strings and see the drugs and that kind of stuff. And these strings automatically flow in there. You don't really have to build the strings. In fact, you can't build the RxM strings or the discharge strings, MedRec strings. They're just automatically there. So that part's kind of nice. There is some mapping you need to do up front, but once that's done, the load is basically the same. So part of this API, though, is the interactions and the conflicts are a little different. They now have what they call screenings. And so because of that, your interaction conflict groups are a lot different. And so we've really, in this site I'm at now, we've really kind of whittled those down a lot for the providers because they were getting a lot of alert fatigue. But then we allowed that stuff to stay on for the pharmacy. And so you can really keep the interactions on, and you can modify what you want to be an interaction or a screening. And this, so basically an interaction in most cases you would want to override, whereas a screening, it's basically just kind of an alert for the pharmacist. And so there's a lot more manipulation you can do around those. And I like it better, but it was a little bit, getting used to. As part of this, there's a string management tool, which I will say it's a little cumbersome. Once you get it set up, theoretically, you shouldn't really have to do too much to it, but it leaves a little to be desired. But I do think Meditech is on the right track here, and eventually this is going to be a good product. And overall, I really like the API. It's a lot less build work that you have to do as far as strings go and that kind of stuff. So I think that's really all I wanted to talk to you about tonight. For formulary service loads. If you have any questions, you're always welcome to, give me a shout out, like hit me up on social media, or most of the places I'm Kris P. Brown, and my email is kbrown@medpreservation.com. Probably the two easiest places to get a hold of me, and I'll be happy to answer any question you may have, or whatever you need. So give me a holler if you need to. Anyway, with that, I want to say be kind, be careful, and always choose joy. We'll see you next time.